شوف نادي الجبيل. شوف انت وينك مع المراد يعني.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the 147th Landon Lecture on Public Affairs. The Landon Lectures were started in 1966 by the late Governor Alf Landon and the late K-State President James McCain. The goal of the Landon Lectures is to bring the most prominent public figures to Kansas State University to discuss the pressing issues of the day. We are very pleased today to welcome Saudi Ambassador Prince Turki Al-Faisal to the Landon podium to join 146 predecessors in bringing his thoughts and opinions on important public issues. I would like to introduce some of the people here. On my left, Professor Roger Adams, Rare Books Librarian and President of the Kansas State University Faculty Senate. Next to him, a rising star in Kansas and American politics, Lucas Maddie, a senior in agriculture technology management and the president of the Kansas State student body. Lucas? On my right, Edward Seaton, chairman of the Landon Patrons and editor-in-chief of our great paper, the Manhattan Mercury. Next to him, the person who runs much of the logistics for the Landon Lecture Series, associate to the president, chairman of the Landon Lecture Series, Dr. Charles Reagan. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am very honored and pleased to introduce to you this morning His Royal Highness, Prince Turki Al-Faisal. He is the ambassador of the Royal Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the United States of America. Prince Turki was appointed ambassador to the United States on July 20th, 2005, where he presented his credentials to the Commander-in-Chief, President George Bush, on December 2nd, 2005. Before becoming ambassador to the United States, he served as Saudi ambassador to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the Republic of Ireland. He has held positions of high prestige and authority in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, including being Director General of the General Intelligence Directorate and the Kingdom's main foreign intelligence service. Before that, he served as advisor to the Royal Court. Prince Al-Faisal graduated from the Lawrenceville School in the state of New Jersey, and he received his bachelor's degree at Georgetown University. I'm sure most of you know this, but the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been a great friend and staunch ally of the United States for years and years and years. The truth is that Prince Turki Al-Faisal has always been an excellent friend and supporter of the United States of America as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to tell you that we have about 100 Saudi students here from Saudi Arabia, undergraduate students, mainly some graduate students, attending Kansas State University. I hosted a lunch for them back in November. I think we had about 85 of the students. I have gotten to know most of those 85. And let me tell you this, they go to class, they learn, they are interested in education, they are extremely professional, they are very friendly, they love Manhattan. I can tell you this, I know I speak for all 100 Saudi students, they love K-State, okay? And I know there are a number of Saudi students, I know most of the 100 who go here to K-State are here right now, but we also have Saudi students from the University of Kansas, the University of Missouri, and from many other parts of America. Would all of the Saudi students who are here today please stand so we can say thank you? Please stand, all of the Saudi students. Thank you very much. You can see there's a great number. And Mr. Ambassador, I can tell you, they are truly outstanding young people. We love having them here, and they represent the Royal Kingdom so well. Well, Prince Turki Al-Faisal has done an excellent job as the ambassador to the United States. He has recently resigned that position to return to Saudi Arabia. Well, I can tell you this. We will miss his eloquence and his steady hand in Middle Eastern diplomacy and in representing the views of Saudis to the United States of America. We are very pleased that the ambassador has accepted our invitation to join 146 of his predecessors in giving his thoughts on the most important public issues confronting the world today. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Prince Turki Al-Faisal.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أفضل المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Just a word, ladies and gentlemen, to my fellow Arab Saudi students in the audience. Don't take the President's praise too much to your heads and continue your studies. But my thanks to President Weifeld and also to Professor Reagan for the extraordinary hospitality and warmth that I have received from them. It is an honor to be at Kansas State University again. In December of 1966, Governor Landon delivered the first lecture in this series. As you may know, its title was New Challenges in International Relations. That could be the title of my talk today. Clearly, there are a variety of new challenges facing the global community. Terrorism, Iraq, Iran, and Palestine, just to name a few. Saudi Arabia and the United States are working together to address all of them. Our two nations are fortunate to have a long history of such cooperation. Our leaders have always worked closely together, and we have long sought new ways of ensuring our continued partnership. If you are familiar with Saudi Arabia, then you know the story of the first meeting between King Abdulaziz, known as Ibn Saud, and President Franklin Roosevelt. King Abdulaziz was the founder of the modern state of Saudi Arabia. These two great leaders first met aboard the USS Quincy in the Red Sea on February 14th, 1945. This is a special day for me, ladies and gentlemen, as it was one day before I was born, many miles away in the holy city of Makkah. The crucial meeting between the men occurred for several reasons. Oil had been discovered 2 decades before in our neighboring countries of Bahrain and Kuwait. Soon after, Saudi Arabia was inundated with various British and French interests seeking concessions in the kingdom. Ibn Saud, however, chose to deal with the Americans. He knew the United States did not have a history of colonial exploitation. Also, Ibn Saud was familiar with the United States Constitution, with its guarantees of individual liberties. This appealed to his love of freedom. So he concluded an agreement of exploration for oil with Standard Oil of California in 1933. He also wanted to get Roosevelt's help in decolonizing the Arab states, including Palestine, that were still under European colonial rule. From Roosevelt's perspective, he was returning from Yalta, where he and Churchill had met with Stalin. They were planning the political and geographic future of the world following the defeat of the Axis powers. Roosevelt was interested in establishing friendly relations in the Middle East region. For very practical reasons, both sides were amenable to a meeting. So it was worth Ibn Saud's long trek from Mecca to the Red Sea, and it was worth Roosevelt's arduous ocean voyage aboard a battleship. What they probably didn't expect was that they would become fast friends. The two leaders had a great deal in common. Roosevelt even gave Ibn Saud one of his wheelchairs. The Saudi king was quite impressed by it, as he was at that point an aged warrior who was suffering from many battle wounds. The meeting began what has become known as the special relationship between our countries. When considering the efforts that had to be made for the two leaders to meet, we are fortunate their personal connection was so strong, weathering distance and time. After the meeting, Ibn Saud and Roosevelt exchanged letters. Those letters took weeks to be relayed. For a long while, our leaders communicated through diplomats in Egypt. An embassy was later established in the kingdom. Clearly, a great deal has changed in diplomatic relations from that day between our two countries and in the world. Now it is a matter of a phone call. With the push of a button, leaders can talk with each other. For critical communications, this has made life easier. Yet it has also changed the role of diplomats like me. So as I conclude my tenure in public service as a diplomat, I would like to share with you some of my views on this changing world of international relations. Today, whether you recognize it or not, each of you plays an increasingly important part in diplomatic activities. Indeed, the very process of international relations has now become the art of public diplomacy. Think about it. Since long before Machiavelli wrote The Prince, international diplomacy was the exclusive province of diplomats and national leaders. Realpolitik was practiced over the centuries by such historical figures as Richelieu, Metternich, Bismarck, and Kissinger, and I might add, in President's own favor, Genghis Khan. From the Western perspective, in the Arab world, our great leaders have included Harun al-Rashid, Abdurrahman al-Thalith, Nizam al-Mulk, Muhammad al-Fatih, Muhammad ibn Saud, Muhammad Ali, Sultan Abdul Majid, and King Faisal ibn Abdulaziz. All of these individuals played political chess with nation states. They balanced and maneuvered one against the other to gain political advantage. The United States, in fact, owes its existence to diplomats. One in particular, Benjamin Franklin. Franklin's popularity and diplomatic skill convinced France to recognize the American colonies as sovereign. In 1778, French support of the 13 states went far to secure your eventual independence from Britain. Today, though, the game has changed. The diplomat has a different job to do. One that is no less important, but one that is definitely apart from whispering secrets in the ears of leaders. Suddenly, an average citizen is as important for us to speak with than any head of state. As Saudi ambassador, I'm equally concerned with the President as I am with all of you. Having been given a voice by the media, the internet, and satellite communications, people are empowered as never before to influence the outcome of world events. The same technology that makes it easy for leaders to communicate has given rise to greater expression and influence of popular opinion. The people have a voice. Leaders listen. And the simple fact is, governments can work together better when their constituents are supportive of their aims. Whether or not a nation's citizens foster a positive environment toward the foreign people matters a great deal. I believe this point is illustrated beautifully by the history of relations between Saudi Arabia and the United States. From the day of the meeting between King Abdulaziz and President Roosevelt, our countries have had a mutually beneficial relationship. It was based on the strength of that first person-to-person exchange. We've had our ups and downs, as they exist in all relationships, but we've helped each other where we could. Together, we successfully fought the spread of communism. Together, we stopped Iraqi aggression in Kuwait. For more than 6 decades, we were strong military allies, reliable energy partners, and good friends. But everything changed on September 11th, 2001. That day, our relationship, which had lasted in calm for some 60 years, was plunged into crisis. Suddenly, there existed deep suspicion, mistrust, and misperception. Any questions we may have had about one another became concerns. Any uncertainty became anxiety. Everything had to be re-examined. It was a horrible period of time. Saudi Arabia, for one, faced brutal criticism. Our country, our faith, and our national character were maligned almost daily in books, newspapers, and on television. We all had to re-examine who we thought we knew and our sense of the world around us. Saudi Arabia certainly went through this. One American columnist wrote after 9/11 that Saudi Arabia had gone through a state of shock, then denial, then introspection, and then action. I think this is a fair assessment. But as our governments worked to re-establish trust and cooperation, there still was a pervasive insecurity among our peoples. Saudis felt scorned by Americans. Americans felt betrayed by Saudis. Misunderstanding bred fear. As I said, it was ugly for both sides. In our work to rebuild, Saudi and American leadership first sought to create a new mechanism to provide regular opportunities for our leaders to talk. After all, even though we can pick up the phone, sometimes we take that for granted. So our nations created the Saudi-US Strategic Dialogue. This new mechanism has institutionalized relations between our countries. That way, we can overcome inevitable differences and align our resources and capabilities to a greater extent. The strategic dialogue is progressing through regular meetings between the Saudi Foreign Minister and the US Secretary of State. Again, on the official level, the best channels for communication are the most direct ones. But one element that was built into the strategic dialogue was on a different level. It was a working group to focus on people-to-people exchange. As ambassador, I chaired the Saudi side of this working group. What our governments had rapidly realized was that we could rebuild official relations, but they were going to be difficult to maintain if our people didn't support them. From Saudi Arabia's perspective, we knew what we had to do. We had to talk. It is not in our nature. It is not what we've done in the past. We are a private people. But we took steps to change. We've invited journalists to cover events in the kingdom. We've invited congressional officials to come to the kingdom. We've widened our doors open to foreign trade and joined the World Trade Organization. We've even amended our visa laws to encourage more visitors. But as the author A. Milne once wrote, "You can't stay in your corner of the forest waiting for others to come to you. You have to go to them sometimes." So we've changed our outward approach as well. This is why I've traveled to some 25 states during my tenure as ambassador. It is why I've talked with countless audiences, and why I've participated in well over 100 public events in the last year alone. But it is not only me, ladies and gentlemen. Many Saudi officials travel through the United States each year. Many Saudi citizens do so as well. Just as it was worth President Roosevelt making that long voyage to meet with King Abdulaziz, it is worth it every time a Saudi talks with an American. The real exchanges, the ones that form lasting bonds, need to be made in person. We believe in this to a great extent. This is why Saudi Arabia has also rejuvenated a scholarship program to send Saudi students to colleges and universities abroad. They can learn, make friends, and experience foreign cultures. In the first phase of the program, more than 10,000 students were offered full 4-year scholarships. Most of them are studying in the United States. As a matter of fact, our cultural attaché informed me yesterday that now we have more than 12,000 Saudi students in your universities. This will instill within the next generation of citizens and leaders the importance of maintaining people-to-people relations. That way, when a hardline evangelical makes a racist comment about Arabs in the United States and it ends up in the New York Times, the Saudi people will understand that this is a minority sentiment. They will actually know Americans and know what they think and feel. The same goes for when a radical imam makes comments aimed at incitement. Americans will understand that this is not the view of the Saudi people, but of one fanatical cleric. It is both important and necessary to maintain an understanding between the people of our two nations, as well as the people of the global community. This is because, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a new age of diplomacy, one of public diplomacy. And the critical nature of employing public diplomacy is relevant to every major conflict in the world today. The problems of one nation or one people are the problems of the world. It is imperative that we truly consider how our political decisions impact the people, not just of our particular nations, but those of the global community. It is their well-being that is ultimately affected, and it is within their power to create change. They will be the ones who will stand up for peace or be the victims of the next act of violence based on how foreign policies play out in their backyards. In this complex era, there are new battles every day for attention, affinity, and loyalty of the people throughout the world. We compete alongside rival factions, terrorists, and even misadventurous states. So we must work and work together. Nations can no longer define their strength solely by individual might. They must define it by the level of cooperation they can achieve to reach their goals. Saudi Arabia and the United States are fortunate to have leadership and citizens like you who continue to encourage our partnership and positive aims in the world. The strength of our long-standing relationship can weather rough times and rise to meet new challenges and an evolving world of complexities. I remain, ladies and gentlemen, hopeful that we will someday see lasting peace. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
You'll be willing to answer some questions?
Yes.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your very splendid Landon lecture address. Let's give him another big hand. Now, as you know, we provide an opportunity for questions, and we have a microphone on your left and on your right. And so if you do have questions, would you please move to the mics? I might ask a question myself. One of our good Saudi student friends asked me to ask you, what is Saudi Arabia doing right now to help the people of Lebanon?
Well, that is a good question. As you know, because Lebanon has gone through so much suffering and so much hardship in the last 25 years. And in Paris yesterday and the day before, Lebanon Donors Conference took place. And our Foreign Minister, Prince Turki Al-Faisal, was representing the kingdom there. Now, as soon as the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel began in the summer last year, the kingdom announced an immediate aid package to Lebanon that included $500 million in grants for aid and reconstruction and $1 billion deposited in Lebanon's central bank to safeguard the currency in Lebanon. And at the conference yesterday, Prince Saud announced a further $1.1 billion in aid to Lebanon. There is also an Islamic Development Bank, which is funded by the Muslim countries in the world, and there are 56 Muslim countries partnering in that bank. It has also announced, and it is based in Saudi Arabia, it has also announced a package of $250 million for social services and basic infrastructure. So all in all, our duty, as Prince Saud said in an interview, to help Lebanon is not simply based on fraternal feelings or amicable relationships, but on the very basic duty that a human being feels for another human being when that one is suffering. It comes of our Islamic tradition to give aid to our fellow human beings wherever they need it. And as such, the kingdom contributes to Lebanon and to other countries as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very nice. I think we have a question right here.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Thuraya Musa. I'm an American Iraqi origin. As an educator that I work with our future leaders and with our brave men and women, they've been deployed to Iraq. I give them the educational tools how to and deal with an average person in Iraq. I wish you are going to be patient with me because I have two questions that they relate to each other. My first question, going back home, which I wish you the best luck in your future.
Thank you.
What are your plans in reforming, not changing, reforming the educational strategies in Saudi Arabia and other countries? Being Saudi Arabia is the most influential country in the Middle East due to its religious status, and economy status. So as we know, because I read the article in Custodian, and from my previous information, that the plan between the Prince and President Bush to bring more Saudi students, out to the West, so they could, blend and understand the Western society. But to me, education is not only obtaining scientific information. Education starts from home, from the mosque, from the workplace, because education also communication, how we accept other people, how they believe, how they worship God or they not worship God, whatever they worship, and accepting those people. So communication really, education really starts from day one the person is born. Even
May I ask what your second question is, please?
My second question, please. My second question is, what are your disciplinary measures that you are going to take with certain mosques that they are sending money out to Iraq to create violence in Iraq. And thank you.
Thank you very much. On the issue of education and what Saudi Arabia is doing to reform, the King has initiated a program even when he was Crown Prince 10 years ago for a full review of our educational status, whether in schools or universities or colleges. And that review has continued throughout these past 10 years with removal of any subjects or words or sentences in those textbooks that are deemed not just unnecessary but even offensive, not only to some Muslim sects but other religions and other peoples. And we have a school, a Saudi-run school in Virginia that is built for Saudi diplomats' children. And of course, it has a license to practice from the Virginia Educational Board. And the texts there were the leading example for what is being done in the kingdom. And I would invite any of you to come and visit that school and see how we teach our children in Virginia, and how that teaching to them in Virginia is reflected in the reform of our educational systems in the kingdom. Basically, we're upgrading our curricula to include not just math and science, as the lady said, but also critical thinking, which is vital and which is a major part of what is taught at a university like Kansas State University, is to be able to allow the student to not only acquire knowledge, but to be able to know what to do with that knowledge, and how to gauge that knowledge, and how to judge whether it is beneficial or not. That is the essential reform that we have instituted in our educational systems. Included with that reform is an expansion of our educational institutions in the kingdom. Although we recognize that we need input from universities like Kansas State Universities and the other universities where our students are going to school here in the United States, there is still a great need in the kingdom because of our growing population to increase the number of universities and colleges and schools. And over the past 2 years particularly, more than a quarter of our budgets on a yearly basis has gone to building new schools and universities and educational institutions in the kingdom. Now, on the other issue that you mentioned about Saudi money going to Iraq, first of all, let me just say this about charitable contributions that any Saudi makes to others outside the kingdom. There has been a complete ban on any Saudi money going outside the kingdom without registration of how, when, and where, and to whom that money is going. So it's not just Iraq, it is everywhere where anybody from Saudi Arabia who wants to send money to a mosque or to a school or to a hospital or to an individual will have to register that when he makes the transfer from Saudi banks. The government is overseeing that effort to make sure that no monies go to the wrong people, however well-intentioned that money may be. And the other thing we're doing is that we have been cooperating with our Iraqi sisterly government to get information from them as to how and where and to whom any money that may be going from Saudi Arabia is getting to Iraq. We've been urging our Iraqi colleagues to provide us with information that they get from the interrogations they hold with any of the people who may be captured in the conflict in Iraq, so that we can work with the Iraqis to prevent any such activity, if there is such activity. We're also working with US authorities, whether in Washington or in Baghdad or in Saudi Arabia, to share with them whatever information their intelligence sources provide them as to how money is going from Saudi Arabia to Iraq. One specific example I can give you is that the kingdom asked Syria, for example, if there are any Saudis who might be going to Iraq through Syria, that they would stop them and send them back to us. And they have. And the ones that have been returned back to us, from whatever information we've had from them, it was monies for their own personal use that they were taking with them. Now that does not preclude that the ones who were captured and returned to us may not have had the kind of money that would support the insurgents in Iraq. But working closely with Iraqi officials and with US officials, we hope that not just from Saudi Arabia, but from other countries as well, if there are any monies going to help the insurrection or to help others commit crimes or terrorism in Iraq, that we can all prevent them from doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Ambassador, we have a question right over here.
Hello. My name is Ian Hartzig. I'm a sophomore from Kansas City. And first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for your lecture. We really appreciated the truth and insight you shared with us. In your lecture, you spoke a lot about the misunderstanding that exists between our cultures because of the extremists and the small factions that exist that obviously are in the minority.
Right.
But it seems that these people, because of the extensive coverage that they continue to get, allow the majority to continue to think that these are the impressions that exist between our worlds and prevent understanding from occurring. And my question for you is, what kind of actions do you think that our social institutions, whether it's politicians, media outlets, or churches, can take to increase the understanding between our cultures, as well as minimizing the impact that these extremists might have?
I believe that both of us have a duty and an obligation to stand up to these extremists in public and not allow them to hijack or to subvert or to overpower the basically sensible and eminently peaceful intentions of the majority of the peoples on both our sides. I'll give you an example of what I mean. And it is an expression of precisely what you said about these extremists getting extraordinary coverage and preeminence in the media. When I was ambassador in the United Kingdom, before coming to the United States, the most prominent figure appearing in British media from the Muslim community in the UK, which is a community of 1.8 million Muslims, the majority of whom live peaceful lives and go to work and pay taxes and seek the same things that we all seek, which is a good life for our children and an opportunity to work, etc. But the most prominent figure displayed on British media, whether it is the television or the tabloids and the newspapers, was a man called Abu Hamza. I don't know if any of you have seen Abu Hamza. If you could draw a caricature of a Muslim cleric, it would be Abu Hamza. His physical appearance and his bombastic way of talking and his denunciation of UK and its values and so on. And he was the only one being quoted as under headlines like Muslim cleric denounces Blair government or Muslim cleric incites hatred, etc. Now, in the UK alone, there are more than 1,000 mosques with 1,000 preachers. Not one of those 999 other Muslim mosque preachers was ever quoted or displayed on the media pages. And it is here where I think the responsibility of media organizations also must be emphasized. It is not fair to seek sensation simply to sell a newspaper and leave an impression that a person like that represents a whole community. Now, in our side of the world as well, we have our own media hypes on things that come out of certain individuals or groups in your country and other countries that denounce Islam or that denounce the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. These are things that we have to be careful how we approach them. And as I said, it is a duty on all of us. We have been lacking in that in the past, I think on both sides, of standing up and meeting these people in the face and telling them, no, you do not represent me. This is how I feel about things. And that's why I said people's power, if you like, is so important and it's so engaged now. And it's a duty on all of us to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Over here, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Prince, for your time, and
thank you
for a great speech. I greatly support the Kingdom's program of sending Saudis over to America so they may get a first-hand experience with the United States. Are there any similar programs where Americans can get first-hand experience with Saudi Arabia?
We're working on that. At the moment, we have, I think, and Dr. Mazid can correct me, just under 40 Americans who are in Saudi universities studying in the kingdom. We'd like to see more. And your government has been working with us to increase the number of Americans. But it is not just students. And as I mentioned in my speech, we need more Americans to come and see Saudi Arabia, more business people. I know there is a business community among the audience here, so I would urge you all to come and partake and share in the very strong and very lively and vibrant economic boom that is going on, not just in Saudi Arabia, but in the whole area of the Gulf. It is really an opportunity for all of you. And you can name whatever business you are in. There is a need for it in our part of the world. The King announced a program just a few months ago of building 5 new cities in Saudi Arabia in the next 10 years. And those cities are going to be built from scratch. For populations of between 250,000 to 500,000 Saudis. So you can imagine the opportunities that exist in nearly 2 million people getting cities built for them, the homes, the businesses, the roads, the hospitals, the schools, you name it. We will need your input in it as business communities and as engineers and as architects and as administrators and all of that. One of the interesting things is that when I arrived here last night and went to the hotel where I'm staying across the road, the owner of the hotel was kind enough to be there to greet me, and he introduced himself to me and he said, you know, I worked in your country for several years in the 80s in the construction business. So here is, and I think originally he was either from the UK or one of the down under countries, Australia or New Zealand. And here's a coincidence, someone who worked in the kingdom 20 years ago because of the economic boom that was taking place there is now here owning a hotel and rebuilding the hotel. So please come and join in the tremendous adventure that Saudi Arabia can offer business people wherever they are.
We have time for 2 more questions. We'll take one here and then one over here.
Sabah al-Khair. Ismi Michael Darling. I'm a former resident of Udaliya and Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. My family lived in the kingdom from 1979 to 1991. During that period of time, the conflict was between the Arabs and the Israelis and Iran-Iraq. As of today, it's Palestinian versus Palestinian, Iraqi versus Iraqi, and now Lebanese versus Lebanese. My question for you is, do you see this violence spreading to the neighboring states, and has the Arab League been in discussions to try to solve the problem that is currently existing among these communities?
Well, let me just, thank you, sir. First of all, I'm glad that you lived in the kingdom and you know where we come from. And I hope you will come back again and visit and bring others with you. But you're right. Whether it is Lebanese against Lebanese or Palestinian against Palestinian or Iraqi against Iraqi, it's a shameful condition to be on. The Arab League has acted on all of these issues. In July 2005, Saudi Arabia called on the Arab League to meet in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, with a proposition to extend an invitation to Iraqi factions to come together under the auspices of the Arab League in Cairo so that they can discuss their differences and overcome them. Amr Moussa pursued that effort and succeeded in convincing Iraqi political parties to attend that meeting in November 2005 in Cairo. And those were meeting for the first time under any auspices, whether from the Sunni or the Shia or the Kurds or the Turkoman or any of the subdivisions of Iraq. And they set a program of further meetings to be followed after that. Alas, the happenings on the ground overtook some of those good sentiments, and the second meeting was not held, but it is still in the offing. And the Arab League has established representation in Baghdad and is pursuing its talks with all of the factions there to try to get them to overcome their differences. In Lebanon, just a couple of weeks ago, Amr Moussa was in Beirut with a program for ending the conflict in Lebanon, and he is still pursuing that program. We in the Kingdom, of course, have offered him all the support that we can get. And just a couple of days ago, when fighting broke out in the streets of Lebanon, the Kingdom contacted all of the parties, Hezbollah and the other groups in Lebanon, but also Iran and Syria and Egypt and others. And at least for the time being, at least since last night, the fighting has stopped. So the Arab League is playing a role there as well. In Palestine, the Arab League has been in the forefront of efforts to bring reconciliation and resolution of conflict between the various factions in Lebanon. But it's a tough going procedure. And Amr Moussa is doing what he can, and the Kingdom and other countries are supporting him. But basically, I think we have to put our houses in order. We have to ask our Iraqi brothers to take on the responsibility of bringing peace to their country. It is the Lebanese who have to bring peace to Lebanon. And it is the Palestinians who must bring peace to themselves in order that they can face the challenges of negotiating with Israel to acquire the independence and the inalienable right of having a homeland for themselves. We urge them all to do so, and hopefully we can get something done, inshallah.
Okay, one more right over here.
Prince, I'd also like to thank you for coming out. I think it's a great opportunity. I actually have two quick questions, and I'll ask them in quick succession because I know time's a concern. My number one question is, what is the Kingdom's policy in regards to the minority Sunnis in Iraq should the United States begin to withdraw troops? My second question is, do you believe that Wahhabism is growing or receding within the Sunni community? And thanks again for coming out.
Thank you. On Iraq, it is not just the Sunnis that concern us. As our foreign minister said, we keep an equal distance from all factions in Iraq, whether Sunni, Shia, Kurd, Turkoman, or whatever. And we think an American withdrawal, particularly a precipitous American withdrawal, is not going to help any of the factions in Iraq. I've always said, and I may have said it when I talked last year in April, that the U.S. came into Iraq uninvited. It should not leave Iraq uninvited. And by that I mean that the Iraqi people and the Iraqi government are the ones who should enter into the United States, with the United States into negotiations as to how and when and the whereabouts of the U.S. withdrawal from Iraq. And we must all recognize that the U.S. withdrawal from Iraq is inevitable. If it doesn't happen next year, it's going to happen the year after or the year after that. So the sooner that the Iraqi government can enter into negotiations with your government on how to do that, the better for everybody. As we understand it from your president and from Prime Minister Maliki of Iraq, those negotiations have been ongoing for some time now between the Iraqi government and the United States government as to where and how and when those forces can be withdrawn. But there is a saying about Arabs that suddenly they fold their tents and steal away in the night. That is not something that we wish the Americans to do in Iraq, because we think that they have a responsibility, not just to themselves, but to the Iraqi people, to do that at the behest and with the cooperation of the Iraqi government. On the issue of Wahhabism, as a Saudi, Wahhabism does not exist for me. It is a term used by mostly Western scholars and experts on our part of the world for simplistic reasons. They see a certain extremist interpretation of Islam, and the easiest thing to do is to put a name to it and to lay blame somewhere for where it comes from. Now, the term is derived from the name of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who was a religious reformer in the 18th century. In the early 1830s, he began preaching reform of religious practices in the Arabian Peninsula, and asking the population to give up some of the superstitions and the accrued practices on the original practices decreed by God and by the Prophet. And he got the support by the year 1740 of one of the local town chiefs in the center of Arabia by the name of Muhammad ibn Saud, who was my ancestor. And they formed an alliance whereby Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab will preach this reform in Arabia, and Amir Muhammad bin Saud would provide the political and military support needed to meet the challenges of the opposition. That movement spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula in the 18th century, so that by the beginning of the 19th century, all of Arabia was under the rule of Muhammad ibn Saud and the succession to Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. But the teachings of people like Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, al-Zarqawi, and some of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Muhammad Qutb and others like them, have nothing to do with the teachings of Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. He never claimed for himself ever to have established a new sect in Islam, as is being portrayed in some of the expert, between quotation marks, studies about him. And he also defined very well that he is a follower of the teachings of Sheikh Ahmed ibn Hanbal, who was one of the four basic and great Sunni clerics who left a legacy behind them and a school of thought defined as the Hanbali school of thought. And many centuries before Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. So things like, for example, suicide bombing, or the killing of innocents, or even the declaration of a jihad. Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab would look upon the activities of people like bin Laden or Zarqawi or al-Zawahiri as being not just counter to Islam, but as being the antithesis of Islam. And he would have declared jihad against them because they go against all of the teachings of God and the Prophet. And so this is where Wahhabism, between quotation marks, stands in Saudi Arabia. But it is an important issue for us to say that because of the extremist interpretations that have come about as a result of before and after 9/11, it's become stigmatized and associated with Saudi Arabia. For example, Bin Laden has issued fatwas against our clerics in Saudi Arabia, who are the embodiment of the teaching of Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Wahab. So I think these things have to be very carefully considered before people accept simply that a broad name like Wahhabism or Jihad or madrasas or things like that are attributed to actual fact. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You've been most gracious. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your excellent presentation here this morning. And so thank you once and all for coming. We will see you soon, and to all of our Saudi students here and from around the country, inshallah.
Inshallah. Shukran.